I inherited the ancient mirror from my Aunt Edith. She'd always had an odd fascination with it, mumbling about shadows lurking within. I thought it was old age and stories, until that one fateful night. The mirror occupied the hallway, a beautiful relic of the past. Yet an unnerving chill pervaded its presence. Around midnight, I passed the mirror en route to the kitchen. My reflection, inexplicably delayed, mimicked my movements, as if trapped in some forgotten moment. The oddity stirred fear, but my rationality dismissed it. It was just an old mirror, weathered and imperfect. I retired for the night, shaken but not perturbed. I was jolted awake by a sudden chill. Squinting against the darkness, I felt my heart stutter. The mirror, no longer in the hallway, now stood at the foot of my bed. It was impossible. I lived alone. Peering into the silvered glass, I saw my reflection. Only, it wasn't me. My face was gaunt, eyes filled with an unspeakable terror. As it reached out from the mirror, the room filled with an icy dread. The darkness in its eyes deepened, and then it smiled. A malicious, predatory smile. "Your turn," it whispered, just before everything went black. Now I am the shadow within, watching my doppelganger live my life, while I'm trapped within this mirror, hoping someone will hear my warning, understand my fear before it's too late for them too.
I'm a collector of oddities, the kind of person who enjoys the strange and the unusual. My interest led me to the bustling online auction where I bought the curiously affordable antique music box, a simple wooden box with a hand crank on one side. I found it charming, an innocuous relic of bygone days. The day the music box arrived, I noticed a peculiar detail. The tune it played was unfamiliar, a haunting melody that sent chills down my spine. Each note hung in the air like a warning, but curiosity always triumphed over my fear. So I cranked the handle every day, filling my home with its eerie song. Shortly after, I started seeing him, the specter. At first, I'd catch fleeting glimpses in the corners of my eyes, a dark figure lurking in the peripheries, disappearing when I turned to look. My sleep was disrupted by the sound of the music box, even though I hadn't cranked it. As days passed, the figure became more tangible. A tall, shadowy entity with an insidious smile that seemed to stretch beyond its face. It began to speak in raspy whispers, reciting macabre tales of past lives and hideous futures. In terror, I turned to the internet to research the box. The seller was no longer registered, but I found a folktale, a chilling story about a cursed music box. The box, according to the tale, was a gateway, a bridge between our world and the realm of a malevolent entity who fed on human fear. The more the music played, the stronger he became. The realization sent waves of cold panic washing over me. I had to destroy the box, but it had grown resistant, impervious to any harm. It was as if the box and the specter were one, feeding off my fear, growing stronger each passing moment. The specter was almost fully formed now, its once whispers evolving into a guttural roar. My home was no longer a sanctuary, but a stage for this cruel haunting. Each night was an orchestra of fright, the specter conducting the symphony, and the music box providing the somber melody. In my despair, I revisited the tale and found a glimmer of hope. A line, almost insignificant, mentioned fighting fear with acceptance. With nothing left to lose, I resolved to face the specter. The next encounter, I did not flee or scream. I stood tall, accepting my fate. He came, as always, towering, grotesque figure with its ghoulish smile. But this time I did not show fear. Instead, I cranked the music box and hummed along to the spectral melody. My voice wavered, but I kept singing, pouring every ounce of defiance into the tune. The specter faltered, its shadowy form flickering. It roared, the sound echoing through the house, but I kept singing. With every note, the specter waned, the haunting melody now a triumphant anthem. When the final note rang out, the figure had vanished, leaving only the silent music box. Never again did the box play its melody. The specter had gone, the haunting ended. But the music box remains a constant reminder of the melody that almost claimed my life and the tune I hum when the fear threatens to creep back in.
I moved into the quaint village of Rookshaven, nestled between the dense forest and rocky cliffs. It was the perfect retreat from city life, or so I thought, until I heard the whispers of witchcraft. Rookshaven had a peculiar tradition. Every full moon, the villagers would gather in the town square and leave offerings of food and trinkets, supposedly for the Moon Witch. One night, driven by curiosity and skepticism, I decided to observe the ritual from my window, overlooking the square. As the moon reached its zenith, a figure emerged from the woods, a woman clad in a silver cloak, her face hidden beneath a hood. The villagers retreated into their homes, leaving her alone in the square. She moved with a spectral grace, gathering the offerings while chanting in an unrecognizable language. The words hung heavy in the air, resonating with an unseen power. Then she disappeared into the forest as mysteriously as she had arrived. Intrigued and a bit terrified, I decided to follow her the next full moon. I maintained a safe distance as she navigated through the dense woods to a secluded glade bathed in moonlight. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, adorned with symbols etched deep into the rock. The woman started her chant, the air growing dense with energy. Suddenly, the ground beneath the altar shifted, revealing a hidden cavern. She descended, and despite the fear gripping me, I followed. The cavern was filled with luminescent crystals casting eerie shadows on the walls. The woman, now illuminated, was young, with an ethereal beauty. Her eyes glowed under the crystal light as she continued her chant, the cavern resonating with her voice. Suddenly, the crystals pulsated, their glow intensifying with each word she spoke. A hum filled the cavern, growing louder and turning into a deafening roar. Just when it became unbearable, everything stopped. Silence consumed the space, the only sound being the soft echo of the last incantation. Then, the crystals began to levitate, spinning around her in a mesmerizing pattern. A blinding light radiated from her, and when my eyes adjusted, she was floating, her cloak swirling around her like liquid silver. The sheer power on display terrified me, and I stumbled backward, stepping on a loose rock. The sound echoed through the silence, and she snapped her gaze toward me. Her glowing eyes narrowed, and she extended her hand, murmuring a command. Suddenly I was unable to move, my body frozen. She floated toward me, her voice echoing in the cavern. "You have seen the unseen, shared in the sacred. You can't leave unchanged." Fear became my world. But then she touched my forehead, and darkness claimed me. I woke up in my bed, the morning sun blaring through the window. Dismissing the experience as a dream, I moved to the mirror and froze. My once brown eyes were now a luminescent silver, a stark reminder of the night's encounter. Now, every full moon, I find myself drawn to the forest, to the glade, to her. The Moon Witch left me with a piece of her power, an echo of the arcane, binding me to Rookshaven and her witchcraft forever.
In my small hometown, legend whispered of a forbidden grove, veiled in mystery and fear, the Widow's Glen. It was said to be cursed, where the dead whispered through the trees and undead souls roamed at night. One day, my adventurous spirit got the better of me. Guided by the fading sunlight, I found myself at the grove's edge. An eerie silence hung in the air, interrupted only by the rustling leaves, their voices whispering a mournful song. As I ventured deeper, the atmosphere grew thicker with a spectral chill. The woods seemed to twist and turn, creating a labyrinth of gnarled trees. Suddenly, a strange glimmer caught my eye. A tombstone, centuries old, concealed by an overgrowth of ivy, marked Agatha. Overcome by an inexplicable dread, I turned to leave but halted as a ghostly wind stirred, chilling my bones. The whispering leaves grew louder, forming words, "Stay with us." A dense fog rolled in, and the whisper grew to a wailing scream. The shadows started to twist, coalescing into transparent figures. Spectral people wearing period clothing, their faces pale, eyes vacant. They moved with a macabre elegance, slowly converging on my location. Overwhelmed with fear, I stumbled backward, but my retreat was cut short by the sight of a figure emerging from the fog. A woman, the most ethereal of all. Her eyes were not vacant, but bright, with an unsettling familiarity. I recognized her from the tombstone, Agatha. She glided toward me, her spectral hand reaching out, attempting to touch me. I recoiled, but she persisted, her voice echoing in the wind. "You're one of us now." In the face of horror, a survival instinct kicked in. I broke into a frantic run, but the grove had other plans. The trees seemed to close in, the path twisted in impossible ways, leading me back to the gravestone each time. Finally, in a desperate plea, I shouted, "I don't belong here. Let me go." As if heeding my plea, a beam of moonlight broke through the fog, illuminating a hidden path. The spirits wailed, the eerie chorus growing louder as I sprinted towards freedom. With the grove behind me, I fell onto the gravel road, gasping for breath. Glancing back, I could still see their ghostly forms, trapped within the cursed grove, forever waiting for the living to join them. Now, when the wind whistles through the trees, I hear their mournful song. They wait in the widow's glen, where the boundary between the living and dead is thinnest. A reminder that some places, some stories, are better left untouched.
I'd always loved the tranquility of the old town. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a comforting predictability. Until the day the calm was shattered by a sinister presence, a masked figure who hunted down residents one by one. The chilling news reports dubbed him the Phantom, a moniker that felt apt given his almost supernatural ability to appear and vanish without a trace. His mask, as described by the only surviving witness, was a grotesque visage of carved wood, with hollow eyes and a cruel, twisted smile. I had always prided myself on being rational, on not giving in to fear. I continued my nightly walks, a tradition of solitude and introspection. It was on one such walk, under the ghostly glow of the street lamps, that I first saw him. His silhouette lurked at the end of the street, the glint of the mask unmistakable. He stood there, motionless, his hollow gaze seemingly locked onto mine. Then he started walking towards me, not running, walking, a chillingly calm and deliberate advance. Panic surged through me, forcing me into a desperate sprint. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I raced through the labyrinthine back alleys, my breath ragged, the cold air stinging my lungs. Yet he was always there. At every turn, every corner, that hollow-eyed mask loomed in the shadows. Desperate, I dashed into the old Thompson house, a dilapidated building long abandoned. Frantically, I barricaded the entrance and climbed to the second floor. The house creaked eerily, the only sound in the deafening silence of the night. But it wouldn't be silent for long. As I hid, I could hear the distant yet unyielding thud of footsteps. The Phantom was methodically exploring the house. Every creak, every groan of the old building sent waves of terror coursing through me. I could hear him ascending the stairs, the rhythmic thud of his steps growing louder. In the dim moonlight streaming through a broken window, I spotted an old iron rod, my only chance. I gripped it tightly, fear giving way to a primal survival instinct. The door creaked open, and there he was. The mask was even more terrifying up close, those hollow eyes devoid of mercy. As he approached, I leapt out, bringing the rod crashing down onto the mask. There was a sharp crack, and he fell, motionless. Exhausted, I stumbled out of the house, reaching for my phone to dial 911. As the sirens wailed in the distance, I looked back at the house. Through the broken window, I could see a figure standing. The Phantom. His head was tilted slightly, observing me. Then he slowly retreated into the darkness. They found no trace of him in the house, just the broken mask, its twisted smile frozen in a silent laugh. Now, every shadow, every noise in the night sends chills down my spine. The Phantom is still out there, his hollow eyes eternally watching, forever waiting. And I am his unfinished business.